uh, mind-blowing when you consider that the preamble of our nation's constitution states that Canada was founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. I mean, it was so motherhood and apple pie back in 1982 that even Pierre Trudeau had to acknowledge that simple preamble. He put it in the Constitution because it was undeniable.
And now moving right along, speaking of alternative electoral parties, I have now Dave Bylsma of the Christian Heritage Party. Dave is actually the deputy leader. And Dave, thank you so much for joining me here on this night, what I call a night of an unwanted and unneeded provincial election, or perhaps were you buying Doug Ford's ostensible policy reason that he had to go to the polls as soon as possible, even with a supermajority government, because he had to fight that fellow who's not on the ballot, Donald Trump, and his impending tariffs? What say you, my friend?
Those are all good questions. He's an opportunist, and he took the opportunity that was afforded to him by the disarray of the opposition. The game of politics is less about value and principles, and quite significantly about what you can accomplish. Uh, I imagine and believe wholeheartedly that when they sit down every morning, the decisions that they make and the choices on how to frame policy, 100% is about how this is going to respond with and react with voters and the electorate. They weighed all those things. They took their polls, they took their feelers, and this was going to give them a win. And so strategically, there's just really nothing to suggest otherwise that this was a crime of opportunity.
I think you're right, Dave. I think they rolled the dice based on two reasons, as we discussed the Trump factor, and the polls looked rosy, and it looked like the polls got it right, and the strategy paid off. So I guess in politics, doing the right thing, doing the moral thing, doing the ethical thing, that's a different kettle of fish than, as Al Davis of the Oakland Raiders used to say, just win, baby. But Dave, tell us, you're with the Christian Heritage Party. What is the Christian Heritage Party all about? If you were to give your 30-second elevator pitch to somebody who's not familiar with the Christian Heritage Party, what would it be?
It's quite simple. It's probably the federal version of the Ontario Party or the New Blue Party. We're Canada's only pro-life party, pro-family party. Uh, we have fiscal conservative policies. We have free market policies, but generally speaking, it's the pro-life, pro-family. The basic founding fundamental building block of society is the family. We've just seen that eroded for decades. Leftist, socialist engineering has left our country in shambles. There's weakness everywhere. There's violence. There's brokenness. And really, if you consider the issues of this particular election or any of the elections that you hear federally, they're dealing with peripheral issues of the bad orange man in the south, or they're distracting from the real root that's eroding our country as we know it. And we've watched. I've been in politics for 32 years. I ran as a candidate for the CHP in 1993, and I've watched the 32-year erosion of democracy and our family. All the policies that have been enacted, anti-family, even as late as the legalization of marijuana. Social conservatives, the CHP has risen up and said this is bad. This is bad for children. This is bad for families, and we repeatedly get ignored, and we're reaping where we have sown as a nation. That doesn't mean that the CHP doesn't have a mandate, even more so. Just being ignored, we've actually shown, how and by every metric we're recognizing that this is bad for the country. CHP has stood for that. The New Blue Party and the Ontario Party here in this election did the same. Unfortunately, that message is soundly rejected. Doesn't make it less true.
Indeed. And Dave, let me ask you, since you are a federal party, since you have the word Christian right in your party's name, I want to get your take on how being anti-Christian, if you will, is almost downright fashionable in certain circles. By that, I mean, the last couple of years, we have seen dozens of churches either vandalized or outright incinerated. And instead of condemnation, we even had Gerald Butts, Justin Trudeau's best friend, saying it's understandable. Understandable. Imagine any person connected to a federal leader who would say that about any other kind of place of worship. Yeah, that it's understandable that it was burnt to the ground. What is your opinion on that, Dave?
Well, it is mind-blowing when you consider that the preamble of our nation's constitution states that Canada was founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. I mean, it was so motherhood and apple pie back in 1982 that even Pierre Trudeau had to acknowledge that simple preamble. He put it in the Constitution because it was undeniable. And our country grew and prospered. If you consider where we were at the turn of the century as a fledgling country with this vast geographic expanse, we had to, in that sense, have dominion over. We did that. We did that by grit, by principle, by fortitude. We didn't do that casually or carelessly. We did that by the strength of our arm and the blessing of God. I see nothing other than that. To reject that seems odd, does it not? It's mind blowing. But that is the case. That often happens. Strong men breed. Beautiful societies breed weak men. Weak men tear down beautiful societies. So you get that cycle, and so the prosperity that we enjoyed when we were a Christian nation has been eroded, and now we find brokenness, poverty, violence. It's really a shame. The CHP should be seen as one concept of Christian heritage. That's our heritage. Our heritage is Christian. It's undeniable. It's in our Constitution, and all we need to do is recapture that original vision. I can see it happening. People in their brokenness, they're recognizing that principles are important, that integrity is important. Did we see that reflected in this evening's election? We did not. Actually, the vast majority of people saw no vision. I think the most abysmal number for me this evening is 27% voter turnout.
Wow.
That means that Doug Ford is sitting there with that uber majority with about 12% of the popular vote. Eligible voters, 12%. He's got the mandate that he has. 27% voter turnout. I can't imagine a more challenging statistic that we need to grapple with as Ontarians.
That is a very sad statistic indeed, Dave. And I mean, I think in 2022 was a record low turnout, 44. But if what you're telling me is right, 27, it's appalling that. Yeah, I get it. It's an unwanted, unneeded election in the middle of a brutal winter. But my goodness, it breaks my heart to see people not exercising their franchise. But Dave, we are all out of time. I want to thank you so much for your time and good luck with the Christian Heritage Party in the future, my friend.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. And that was the deputy leader of the Christian Heritage Party, Dave Bylsma.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.